There was a lot about this film that was new for me. I'm usually making like indie films, I feel like, or I spend a lot of time doing stand up. I've worked a lot in TV, but I haven't made many movies that are like where first of all, like the source material, the intellectual property is like this big, huge thing. That just has not that hasn't really happened for me, and I was really excited to see what it was like from the inside.
Hey besties, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It has been a roller coaster of a week, and that's just to put it mildly. Since I started covering the situation at the end of January, I know I came in a little bit late, I'm sorry. It's been a roller coaster. It's been wild. There's been fast paced days where it feels like the docket doesn't stop moving. There's been days when there's been so much information that becomes public that you can't see straight. There has been misdirection and oversaturation and narratives being spun. And this week was no different, right? And I think both sides are playing a game of PR. This is a game about PR. It's about restoring the image of a man that has been falsely accused, and Blake Lively just being Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds just being Ryan Reynolds. That's my opinion. Please don't sue me. We all know that there's this ongoing fight about a subpoena in Washington, D.C., related to Taylor Swift's attorney, Douglas Baldridge, and alleged conversations that he had with Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and her attorney, Michael Gottlieb. We know that Brian Friedman filed an affidavit in court under the penalty of perjury. We also know that a judge struck it down and called it improper in the wrong venue, and basically reminded the press that just because someone files something in a motion or in a letter doesn't mean it's true, and the press should take note of it. You can make a lot of claims in court, and I guess New York is no different. And they have absolute privilege of, being cleared from defamatory claims. But whether you think it's true or not with what happened, allegedly, or what Brian says happened, with a source coming forward connected to Taylor Swift and providing him a third party account of what they heard from Taylor. So it is a little bit convoluted. It's like a friend of my friend of a friend. Unless, of course, it is someone like Taylor's parents or her publicist or her boyfriend, someone very close to her that might have been privy to when this was happening. We don't know because he didn't identify him. But when the judge struck it down, Blake's team, they were praising it and they were like very excited. And Michael Gottlieb and her PR released a statement, and Gottlieb says that the conversation didn't happen as described. As described. So they admit a conversation happened. They admit a conversation happened with Taylor Swift's attorneys about Blake and Taylor and possibly putting out a statement. But apparently it was not as described. Now, the same can be said for, like, Baldoni says that the way that Blake is framing this alleged smear campaign, which we don't believe, he says it's not as described in her leaked text messages, right? But either way, they're acknowledging that a conversation happened. Whether or not it's relevant, whether or not it matters, whether or not, we don't know. But when you're involved in a case like this, you have to deal with this really awful part of it, meaning that possible communications that you have with people that are private and off record and not stuff that you would show publicly can become part of the public record of a court case. And there is a pretty significant protective order here. And obviously, not all of the text messages are going to become public, unless, of course, you're Blake Lively, but who will maybe leak them for a friend. If it wasn't true, and if this didn't happen, you would think that, at least I would think that Taylor would then come out and be like, yep, you're right. It didn't happen. It wasn't true. I can't believe they did this. All her attorneys would have had to do is like refute it, or all Tree Payne would have had to do was refute it. But that's not what happened. In fact, after the judge struck from the court record the letter and the affidavit that Mr. Brian Friedman posted to the court docket, Taylor Swift's team, whether it's Tree or her publicist, I'm assuming it's her PR, spoke to multiple outlets, People Magazine and the Mail. Two separate outlets have running two separate stories, and neither one of them have anything to do with Taylor being so glad the judge threw out that record. The first article where Taylor is sort of addressing it is that she has halted her friendship with Blake. She wants no part in this drama. I thought the use of drama was an interesting one because if you are someone that is believing all women and you believe this happened to your friend, you probably wouldn't call this drama, right? But that's what it sounds like she thinks it is. So, People Magazine is some place that a lot of the Swifties trust because it's where Tree has her relationship with. It's a source that a lot of publicists love because they won't push back or ask questions. And it's a great PR magazine, I guess, if you would like to say that. So they said that they can exclusively report she's struggling as she faces a subpoena by Baldoni's legal team. The friendship has halted. Taylor wants no part of this drama. Now, they must have talked to Leslie Sloan because then a separate source said they're indeed taking some space, but they're not no longer friends. I really wish they would stop giving Blake the space to decide if Taylor's not friends with her. Swift is really hurt after being implicated in her legal fight, but that stars were working to put it all behind them. That is all out the window. The subpoena has fractured the fragile peace between Lively and Swift, who is the godmother to her kids. So they were trying to put things behind them, but then she got subpoenaed. And apparently, this is the end. And Gigi Hadid is also leaving. They said Gigi feels terrible that her close friend is being pulled into legal drama. Again, another person referring to alleged smear campaigns and sexual harassment as drama. Gigi is closer to Taylor and has definitely taken a side in the whole drama. Gigi doesn't want to get involved in the whole ordeal, but she's closer to Taylor and has distanced herself from Blake, although she still considers her a friend. In the same article, they discuss that affidavit and how the affidavit allegedly, included conversations between Swift's legal team and Lively's legal team. And they make note that it was struck from the record. And they include Michael Gottlieb's statements and they include Blake's PR statement. And there's no refutal. There's no refute from her. They have the content of what happened this week with the affidavit, right? In the same article as Taylor saying the relationship is over and it's because of this subpoena. Okay. And then the same article references what Baldoni filed and they don't refute it. They could have asked her, do you have a comment about this? She said nothing. Again, instead, she's ending her friendship. So then the Daily Mail took it a step further and says Taylor is done with Blake, and so is their mutual pal, Gigi. So very similar narratives between People and Daily Mail. Okay. Their friendship has gone cold amid Blake Lively's high stakes lawsuit battle with actor Baldoni. Swift was dramatically subpoenaed despite attempts to distance herself from the case. And their insider told them there's no recovering from this. Their friendship is done. What Blake has done was exploit the godmother of her children and manipulate the public into thinking that she was watching out for her best interests. Taylor is done and Gigi is done with Blake, and she has no one to blame but herself. Taylor's a girl's girl and loves her friends. She will bend over backwards for them. But when the trust is broken, there is no going back. They also have a quote that Gigi is no longer friends with Blake. Gigi is loyal to Taylor. She is not and will never be one of Blake's dragons. If your best friend is making claims of sexual harassment and sexual assault, and you're supportive of your friend and you believe them, why then would you be offended about being brought into a legal case? Celebrities get pulled into other celebrities' lawsuits all the time due to the fact that they're friends. They may have to testify, they may have to give depositions. This isn't abnormal. lawsuits related to films and copyright and intellectual theft and extortion in celebrity world isn't uncommon either. If you had something to offer and it was something relevant, you would understand that while you may not want to be involved in it, that you will become involved in it because of your proximity to what occurred. But what it really feels like is, from my estimation here, is that they feel like she exploited their names, used their names to bring publicity to this film, that she overstated, Blake did, what Taylor and even Gigi might have been involved in. She brought up Gigi's name a lot, by the way. And then weaponizing them and her proximity to Taylor specifically, as though having Taylor in your back pocket can be used as not only a gift, but also as a weapon. And, I don't always love Taylor Swift. I do like her music, I'll tell you that. She's not my favorite singer, but I love her music. She's had public feuds with other friends, right? She's had falling outs. She's written about them in songs. She'll probably write a whole album about Blake. But I was trying to think of what Taylor's actual behavior publicly has been when it comes to friends. And generally it's not to throw them under the bus. It is to be supportive. I mean, Taylor was not best friends by any means with Kesha. Absolutely no reason to help her. She didn't have to help her, but she saw what Kesha was going through and she offered her money and emotional support because she believed Kesha and she believed in what she was fighting and she was supporting another woman. So in this case, her lawyers say we can't verify if any of this is true. And now she's saying, you did this, you exploited your best friend. She's exploited the godmother of her children and manipulated the public into thinking she was watching out for her best interests. So, publicly, what they were doing in the case was trying to claim that they wanted all of these protections in the third party discovery to protect the celebrities that might end up getting subpoenaed. And they spent a whole lot of time in that public hearing where they argued about protecting the privacy of these celebrities that are going to get subpoenaed because of their proximity to Blake and Ryan and to Justin. And they were making it a display as though they were fighting for Taylor to keep her communications private. That's what it felt like overwhelmingly in the hearing. They've been publicly decrying and saying that Justin is exploiting her and dragging her into this and it's not fair and that she's being used for clickbait and this is horrible. But then on the flip side has also said that she didn't see the movie and she wasn't involved in anything and so she's on the one hand ripping apart Blake's claims that she was involved and so the attorneys have said the same there was no involvement here, none. And so on the one hand she's calling Blake a liar and on the other hand she's mad at Baldoni, so maybe she's team no one. But that last part of that sentence is what Blake has done was exploit the godmother of her children and manipulating the public into thinking that she was watching out for her best interests. She's implicating and intimating here that behind the scenes, Blake was not behaving in a way that is how a friend would behave if they are truly trying to protect your best interests. So she's using her proximity to Taylor to use Taylor's name for clickbait for the lawsuit as though she's protecting her and trying to fight for her, but then privately she's not treating Taylor with that same respect. And she's apparently telling Taylor, listen, your text messages might get released. And it's interesting because that conversation happened right before Blake dropped her second amended complaint. And maybe she wanted Taylor to give her, you know, permission to share in the documents or in the court records. I don't know. I don't know. But again, the implication here is that behind the scenes, Blake was manipulative and not caring about whatsoever Taylor or protecting Taylor in any way. It was the opposite, but then told the public she was. That's a pretty bold statement. There's no refute from there that this didn't happen. And again, Gigi's done with her and they're not her dragons and they don't want to be friends with her. It's done. Some people in the media are confused. Well, if everything that was posted by Baldoni's team and if his lawyers are lying, of course Taylor and Swift are friends. But I don't understand how the mainstream media can't see what's happening here. Taylor's been trying to publicly say this for months that she's not friends with Blake. And every time she tries to say it, Blake comes back in the PR and is like, no, we're best friends and we're fine. I'd say that Blake did exploit her friend's name, used her friend's very famous position, way bigger than her or Ryan, to gain publicity for the film and used her proximity to her as a weapon against Baldoni. And when she saw the text from the complaint from Baldoni's side, that was a huge turning point for her because she saw what Blake was saying about her privately. That would feel like a betrayal to anyone. That response to me was like, okay, I would say maybe there's some truth to what happened. I don't know what actually happened, and I don't know if it'll ever come up, and I don't know if we'll ever know all the details. But the fact that Taylor's done really tells me all I need to know. Now, supporters of Blake are trying to say that this is what Baldoni's good at. He's good at pitting women against each other. And now it's no longer about Blake versus Baldoni, but it's Blake versus Swift. And I would disagree. I wholeheartedly disagree. I think there's two parallel issues happening. It's Taylor versus Lively because of what Lively did. Because as they said at the Daily Mail, they said she has no one to blame but herself for what she did. That has nothing to do with Justin. And Justin trying to get information about Taylor Swift isn't about pitting women against each other. If you're part of a lawsuit and you're getting sued and your friend licensed a song and you told the director that the friend was super involved, he's going to subpoena that friend. The only person that brought Taylor into the situation is Blake. So no one's pitting Taylor against Blake. Blake pit herself against Taylor with her own behavior. Okay, I want to point something out because of something that was shared. And a lot of people are wondering why this was brought up by Friedman. And I'm starting to get the sense that they are not pro Taylor, they're not pro Blake. I'm starting to get the sense that Baldoni's team is realizing how little Taylor had to do with this and how much she lied about Taylor's involvement and how Taylor's lack of involvement and ignorance to what was happening and the fact that she was using Taylor as a tool has made them realize that Taylor can be used in a way to show that Blake lied. It's a way for them to chip away at Blake's credibility and to show the manipulative way she used this person to gain power on a film set that she never should have had power or access to that kind of power. And if they know that Taylor isn't as involved, right? They have to. They have to know because obviously at this point they've had a chance to speak to someone close to Taylor, right? And if they're only going to seek information about this possible threat she made to Taylor, it makes it seem like they might back off of asking Taylor for everything, or maybe they're willing to negotiate with Taylor about what she gives them in their through the subpoena. Taylor has another week to reply, and I'm sure Taylor is angry about the subpoena because from her point of view, if I put myself in Taylor's view, is why am I involved in a lawsuit in something I had nothing to do with? She basically inserted a friend into a fight, but that friend had nothing to do with the fight. It was just a manipulative tool for that friend to get what she wanted. And when you have the kind of fame that Taylor has, she's spoken about how hard it is for her to trust people because there are so many people that are in this industry and people that befriend her that are there for the wrong reasons. And I think she believed after all of these years, Blake was not that person, but clearly she was. So I could see why she would be angry about getting a subpoena if she really did have nothing to do with it. And if she really did have nothing to do with it, then Wayfair can use this as a way to show, see, she even lied about Taylor Swift. So if she lied about Taylor Swift, why don't you think she would lie about the sexual harassment? Because it's another way for her to leverage power. It all comes down to manipulation. Everything is a vehicle and a tool for her to get what she wants. And it doesn't matter if it's true at all. And part of that is Ryan. Ryan is clearly very much behind this as much as Blake is. And the Daily Mail is trying to put out some warning shots, I guess, to remind Taylor about what's at stake here, of what Blake could potentially disclose about her. And this is just low, honestly. I can't tell where this is coming from. It doesn't feel like it's coming from Taylor, but it's claiming that Blake was threatening to expose basically intimate, private details about Taylor's love life, her sex life, her relationships with her exes, her current relationship, her insecurities. She was threatening to put out information about their relationships with all the different guys that she had been with over the years while Blake and her were friends. So they're claiming that Taylor had confided in her about her high profile relationship with Travis from the very beginning to their bedroom secrets. So she was going to potentially disclose and have splashed across the headlines details about Taylor and Travis's sex life. And they're also claiming that she would Taylor shared very raw details with Blake about her boyfriend of 6 years, Joe Alwyn, and her brief romance with rocker Matt Healy. And she was willing to put out private information about the breakups with these guys and the relationship. And the intimate revelations about her private life are contained in all of these texts. And that was the threat. Like, if you don't do this, we're going to splash it all over the headline. And then this article goes into all of the details about all the men that she dated, which is sort of like this warning shot to Taylor. Like, I could still put this out, talking about Calvin Harris and Joe and the guy that she dated for like 2 minutes, Tom Hiddleston, and now her current relationship with Travis. And apparently, Taylor and Travis, while they're very public and they started out very public, they don't want all of their private, intimate details out for public consumption. And because of that threat, apparently that's why Taylor is done. But it would appear that it would be more like the threats are, a last ditch effort, like you're not getting what you want. You're losing the proximity to who you have. You're trying to leverage some level of control over them to intimidate them into giving you what you want after bringing them into something that doesn't involve them. That's just crappy. Now, is it relevant to the case? I don't know, honestly. If she told Taylor to delete text, yes, that's relevant. If the threats were for her to put out a post to support Blake because of the lawsuit, then yes, it's relevant. Whether or not Friedman will ever get access to that is unknown. But it's a really crappy way to do a friend of 10 years. And it just shows how utterly diabolical and cold and callous and careless these people are. And I don't know when the mainstream media is going to wake up, because of Taylor Swift, who is supposedly America's sweetheart. And you guys, we know that Taylor's a human, right? She makes mistakes and she's not perfect. And she keeps so much of her life guarded around this very vanilla image of herself to maintain a level of popularity and relatability to people. So she doesn't want to be disliked and she wants to be marketable. And so she has to keep a lot of things private. And it's sad because people that do that, that are trying to play it safe, yes, they can get very famous, but then they also have so many skeletons that would completely dismantle and destroy that public mask that they wear. So, yeah. But to think that a best friend would do that is pretty crappy. But it doesn't surprise me because it's the same crap she pulled on Justin. And if Taylor thinks this about Blake, she's got to know that Blake is lying about Justin, or else she would have supported her friend. So, what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys.